Hey there, welcome to Life by Tiwana. You're watching the Performances and Panels playlist. This week I attended an FYC screening at the Television Academy for Bruce Springsteen's Road Diary. As a native New Yorker, I'm a fan by default. Even if the boss is technically from New Jersey, the tri-state pride runs deep. This documentary was more than music. It was about the family he built with the E Street Band, legacy, and what it means to grow older. Honestly, it felt like a farewell film. As Bruce spoke about aging, I realized I've been feeling that too, quietly mourning my 40s and reflecting on the passing of youth. It hit home. But you know what? Let's get into the panel.
Let's hear it for Road Diary, Bruce Springsteen. My name is Anthony Bresnikan. I'm an entertainment writer at Vanity Fair. I'll be moderating the Q&A tonight. Every great rock and roll show needs a great encore, right? Yeah. Right? We have some of the creators of this documentary you just watched here with us tonight, but before I bring them out, they've asked me to ask you to keep in mind that they will be posing, they'll wave, you can take your photos, take videos later on after we have our conversation. As they're coming out, just be cool. No one's going to come out and, frog march you out, but the boss is going to be here. You can't have him think you're uncool. That would be terrible. Terrible. All right, so we're going to start with the filmmaker and editor of Road Diary. He's been working with Bruce pretty much for a lifetime, and he's directed other projects about Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, and Bob Dylan, as well as Sylvester Stallone. It all started with Bruce and the E Street Band in 2001 when he edited the TV special Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band live in New York City. He first directed him in 2005's Wings for Wheels, The Making of Born to Run, and made the 2018 film Springsteen on Broadway, 2020's Letter to You, and they co-directed Western Stars in 2019. Please welcome the director of Road Diary, Tom Zimny. Talking about lifetimes here, we've got a guy from the E Street Band who's been playing with Bruce. I think last year he celebrated 50 years, half a century playing with the E Street Band. You know him as the band leader of the Max Weinberg 7 from the Conan O'Brien show for all those years. Please welcome Max Weinberg. Finally, he's the producer, he's the writer, and he's the star of Road Diary. I can't believe I get to be the one to say this, but please welcome Mr. Bruce Springsteen. So they sat here. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
Go to the chair. I'm lost in it.
You guys sat there, you watched the whole movie, you've lived with it for a long time. I'm wondering, when you're watching it tonight, is there something new that jumps out at you?
Well, I was really, really big because I was watching it from the front row. My God.
I think just seeing the details projected, anything projected is just a great treat, and every time I watch it I find something new. But tonight, some of the expressions in the crowd, just reading it projected, got me emotional and brought back a lot of memories.
Wow. A lot, I must say. And the love that's displayed on the stage and from the audience. Quote, the man himself asked me once, why do they call it a concert? You play a concert. Well, no, you're in concert. That's why the lights come on at the end. It's one big giant organism. And to be in the middle of that is something really spectacular. And as Bruce said, sitting in the first row, boy, you're really big. It's very impressive.
40 feet tall. It must be a unique experience because you don't get to see Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band with an audience very often. You're on stage. You're on that side of it. What's it like sitting here watching it with a crowd?
Well, I was very superstitious the whole first half of my work life, and we didn't film intentionally anything. I was always afraid that if the magician looks too close at his magic trick, something's going to go wrong. So for years, we never intentionally filmed. Some of the stuff you've seen was just sort of, I had a buddy with a camera, and he just came into the studio during Born to Run, and I let him run around with it for a little while. And then occasionally somebody would end up, we went to England in 1975, the BBC filmed it, but I was so nervous, I didn't even notice it. I didn't look at it for 30 years. And it wasn't until actually I got with Tom that I said, okay, from here on in, we're going to film everything we do. And that was 25 years ago. It started with Live in New York. And since then, we've basically filmed every different iteration of the band and every different concert tour in one way or another. Initially it was just, I was young and didn't want to look at myself. And, it was just, it took me quite a while to sort of get involved in the, and then we made videos which were generally horrible, so that was a problem. So I don't want to look at those, so I figured, but finally Tom came along and gave me access to a visual sense of the band and a way to communicate visually, which previously I had not had, and so Tom's entry into my life has been a very important and big part of the visual part of our career.
Tom, how do you chronicle the work of the band without interfering with it? Because the camera I think what you're probably afraid of is that the camera would change things, right? Change how you work, make people self-conscious. How do you, over the years, work with Bruce and the band to get up close, but not so close that you get in the way or make them nervous?
I love thinking about it as a guest, and I approach literally like the rehearsals that are in the film. I also been blessed with a lot of time that people don't think about me being there, and I don't make a presence. I'm taking in everything, but I'm not announcing anything, and I'm not announcing I see a theme about the set list, or I'm not announcing that was. I'm just invisible. There's an energy there that you just want to be part of, and at the same time, I'm watching stories unfold. I'm watching details, and I came into this as a director, first as an editor, and I think there's a certain ego with an editor that I've carried with me as a director, which observes and pieces together a narrative in the moment, and I just love the trust that I have with the band.
And also, we don't start out with a concept like, sometimes they'll just say, okay, we're going to record tomorrow, bring your camera. We're going to go out on tour, bring the camera, So what happens next develops out of just the natural environment that we're in and the choices we're making on any given day. In this particular case, this film sort of evolved out of our set list and out of the themes from Letter to You and from the themes from the set list, which basically was a show about life, like I say, life, death, and everything in between, accenting on mortality, you know, which, and so Tom films a lot of things and then goes in and he finds that story, you know, in what he's shot. And then we collaborate a little bit and we see where we can take it, you know.
Sounds a little like wildlife photography. Like you're trying to be quiet and let things play out rather than asking questions or interfering, asking people to do things.
I definitely
show you something.
Max, when we had the interview, told me about the moment on stage where Bruce said, "Everyone get quiet." So I think a big part of this in the dialogue with some of the interviews, and I didn't remember that moment, and I'm taking my cues not only from what I'm filming but also the conversations too.
And you have to understand something about Max Weinberg if you just watch the film. Max, how many operations have you had on your hands?
Well, I've had 8 operations on my hands, 2 back. We shoulder rebuilt, all to serve.
And you have to understand, he's skipping over his 13-hour heart surgery. So, at one point, or perhaps many points, I could have killed Max Weinberg by simply doing what we do. He didn't tell me. After he told me he had the 13-hour heart surgery, he said, "Max, Jesus Christ, why didn't you tell me, man? I could have killed you during one of the encores, you know?" But I have to salute Max. As you can watch in the film, he's doing things that guys half his age would have a very difficult time doing.
Max, you've been playing with him for half a century.
Yes.
What do you see? Do you learn something new about him through a film like this? A movie like Road Diary is aimed at showing the fans a little something about the creation, music, the creative process. But you've been up close and personal, creating with him for a long time. Does it bring something new to your point of view?
Well, what first comes to mind is, given my position on stage behind Bruce, it's wonderful to see it from the front. You know, the facial expressions and things that I don't typically get to see. And what really, after all these years, since 1974, is the consistency that Bruce and the band, and the guys, ladies and gentlemen of the E Street Band have brought to the performance, to carrying out in the best way we can and feel to give Bruce what he wants. It's very, from a musician's point of view, very selfless, and that's the job. And I learned very early on not to take my eyes off of Bruce on stage, and this that you're putting on a show, you know. And I've said it before, but the only thing you could be sure of is you really can't be sure of what Bruce Springsteen might do on stage. So it never pays to take your eyes off of him.
And this is going back to one performance at the bottom.
Yes. When I learned that the only way you can, the hard way, and here I am still 51 years later, so I learned my lesson well, but I did take my eyes off of Bruce one time.
Well, you have to understand also, it's the nature of bands. I mean, we've been together for 50 years. The nature of the bands is to break up. It's not stay together. Everything deteriorates, you know, in the natural world. And so, I mean, forget about bands, but it's usually 2 people can't stay together. Simon can't stay with Garfunkel. Sam hated Dave. Phil Everly hated Don Everly. Hall don't like oats. You know, the Gallagher brothers, forget that. They really, so that's just human nature. If you are, our job is the only job, or the people you went to, imagine this, if in your job, the people you went to high school with, you are still with those people 50 years later doing the same job. 50, I mean, you know, you go through everything with those people. So it's a very, very unnatural thing for bands to stay together, and particularly bands when you get to our vintage, you know. I mean, there's a lot of reasons bands stay together. You know, money, you know. So, you know, in our case, we're lucky. Our band still legitimately likes one another, and you know, so it's an amazing. The film sort of encapsulates an amazing thing, you know, that the band remains as committed to its ideals as it was from the beginning. People go on stage at night not to fool around, you know. They're you know, the corniest thing in the world, of course, is to say, you know, oh, well, we come out to change the world, to change your life, but that's what we do. And you know, in some small fashion, you don't know who you're singing to that night. You don't know who they might become. You don't know who they might be. You know, you don't know the importance of any one given performance. You know, and so the night is filled with human possibility. Every pair of eyes that you look into and I look back into yours, you just don't know what they may bring to the world or not, you know. So it remains a privilege and an honor to perform for your audience, and I think that's something that every member of the E Street Band carries with them, and deeply believes in to this day, you know. And it makes what we do an incredible pleasure and an honor to serve you. You know, that's what we come out at night for, so.
I love that. I think that's really moving. Not only do you have that commitment to each other as a band, but you have a commitment to them.
Of course.
Commitment to the audience. And that was one of the things I thought was very interesting in Road Diary is it seemed like even after all this time, you still feel wonder at this connection you have between your music and the people out there, well, and the feedback.
The funny thing about playing is it's the only thing I know that after you've played thousands and thousands of nights, each night feels like the first time. It's very strange. Why that is, I don't know. But imagine if you could have your first kiss over and over and over and over again. That's what playing every night is, you know? And that's how it feels when you walk off stage, that something new and transcendent has just occurred in your 75-year-old life, you know? It's really there is a sense of wonder in it, and there is a real magic trick that occurs. You pull something out of the air, something that doesn't exist, something that you've created on that night only with that audience. You know, that is unique. It's like a fingerprint. Each night, it's unique unto itself. As Max was saying earlier, we are in concert with you. As good as the E Street Band can come out and play, and we can come out and play well on any given night, we can only play as good as you are, you know. We can only get, you know, to that level that we try to attain every night, that level of a certain sort of transcendence and joy and promise and hope, on any given night in concert with you, our audience, you know. So it remains an incredible experience for us, you know. So.
Applaud that. The word I kept hearing over and over again in the movie was story. When you're in rehearsal, you're talking about the story you're going to tell with the set list. There's a story. One of the things I really love about your music is that you're a storyteller. There are so many songs I could point to, and I know the characters in that. some rock songs you love, but you're like, I don't know what that song's actually about. But you connect with people because you tell them stories about who they are. And I wondered, Tom, if you could tell me, it sounds like you just turned the camera on and showed up for rehearsals and knew you were going to chronicle this point in their lives. But how did you find the story of what this movie would be? When did it present itself to you?
I think it presents itself in the abstract quiet of the edit room. There's a scene in Road Diary where Bruce is calling out the songs. And sometimes you just play a scene, you don't understand why. And he was referencing the titles, and I just kept playing it again and again. And then I started to realize, wow, the power of all this writing, all these characters, all these different chapters. Sometimes it's unconscious, sometimes in the moment I'll go, oh, I'll hold that, that's a story beat. But I am very involved with the lyrics. I think about the stuff a lot, and I've lived with the music.
And it's interesting is when Max initially got in the band, and I don't think he'll mind me telling you this, is he had trouble staying in time. And it was on the River album. I said, Max, here's why you have to stay in time. When you stay in time, you deepen the characters in my writing. You make them more steadfast, steady. You dig deeper into their souls, and you bring more meaning to my music. And what'd you do, Max? You went home and slept with
Well, it was my rock and roll bar mitzvah. The conversation, if I may, took place in June of 1979 in the lounge of a recording studio in New York. And I must say, I was 28, and it really did change my life. And I had a lot of potential at that age. I also had a lot of anxiety that I brought out in my drumming. And but Bruce sat me down. And we talked about, I listened, he talked about what, and he used a wonderful metaphor. And he said, picture a John Ford movie. The story, the character is on the horse going across Monument Valley. I'll never forget this. You are the mountains. You have to be the mountains. And when I say it was my rock and roll bar mitzvah, it was that conversation changed the course of my life, because I've been in the band 5 years. I could have gone one way. I went the other way. And when Bruce said I slept with a drum set, I went into this a deep, deep Zen-like state for about 5 years of, I can remember, if I may tell this story, Derek Jeter was sent down to a AAA team to work on his batting ability. This was my Derek Jeter moment. I went back, took drum lessons. I talked to drummers. And the expedient thing would have been, in many cases, to simply bring in someone else. Very common in the 60s. Bruce gave me the shot and said to me, I know you can do this. And that, the strength of that conversation, the belief that he had in me that I could rise to the occasion, I think that's what Tom captured in this movie, was the work, the incredible amount of time we all spent on learning our craft in support of the songs, the writing. It's as I've gotten older and playing these same songs, I've taken out, I've taken away. And one of my favorite songs that I played on is Tougher Than the Rest, which is simply a beat. And Bruce, I'll thank you for the great metaphors that you've given about, I remember you said it's like a Tennessee walking horse, that beat. And you just it just goes on inexorably. So, as I said, what Tom brilliantly captured was how the shorthand that we all have, from so many hundreds and thousands of hours of doing this, and the sleeping in the same beds on the bus. And what you're seeing up there isn't just putting on a show. It's really all of our lives together, led by Bruce, who, you know, sits in his room and comes up with the goods. And we're the colors he uses. And we were talking earlier, it's a privilege to be this age. And playing songs we played 50 years ago and finding new meaning every night. And playing them, and everybody does this. This is an ethos. Playing them as if it's the first time you've heard them, and it may be the last time we play them. And I'll just tell this one last thing because I'm thinking sort of stream of consciousness. But the very first show that Roy and I played with Bruce was September of 1974. And we did a 2.5-hour show. We were ready to leave. And Bruce will remember this. It was outside of Philadelphia. And we had yet another show to do. And Bruce, how do you do this twice in a row? He said, the key is you don't pace yourself. You give 1,000% all the time. And that was really important to hear. So, thank you for the lesson. And when you adopt that and internalize it, it just becomes a natural way of doing it. And I've said, I don't mean to hijack the conversation here, but I think if you were dropped onto our stage during a concert, two things you would notice: the intense focus and the amount of relaxation that it takes to get that focus. And it's just, again, it's an honor, it's a privilege to still be doing this, finding new things all the time.
You know, Max is describing how each member of the E Street Band contributes to your storytelling. You know, and storytelling is fundamentally the way we contextualize our lives and our experiences, and that's its value. That's why people show up at night, you know? And that's why I show up at night. You know, I walk out on stage with the intention of learning something about you. I'm learning something about myself. So, you know, it's a good job. Good job. And pays very well.
The benefits are great. I was thinking about that too. We talked about the wonder you have that this still works. You know, performing music can maybe feel like building sandcastles sometimes, right? You play it, it goes, people go on with their lives, but you've created something momentous, something permanent out of music, and people carry it with them. And it reminded me, watching this film, of an interview I did years ago with another person who's in your business, has your job. There aren't many of them. But he was talking about the wonder he feels about playing in front of thousands of people, emotional connection they have. And he had an epiphany at an E Street Band concert. And this was his quote. He said, I recently went to see Bruce Springsteen, and when he played Promised Land, I was screaming. I was grateful to Bruce, but I realized what was actually moving me. What was in my life when I first heard that song. That's the humbling bit that performers don't always admit to. They're only a small part of what's really going on. It was my story he was playing. And that was Bono from U2.
Those Irishmen.
The only other band that still likes each other besides you guys. But I wonder what you think hearing that, not because it comes from Bono, but my guess is everybody here in this audience who's seen you perform has their own stories, right?
Yes.
That are connected to those songs. And it seems like that's kind of the feedback, right? Is their stories matter too during a concert.
I mean, that's the pleasure of the job, you know. You know, you have the ability to go out and mix your story with theirs, you know, on any given night. You know, it's a wonderful experience, and at this late date, you know, we like we say in the film, we're going to be rolling till the wheels come off, because you meet people who go, when are you going to retire? Or who go, are you still alive?
It's a flattering question.
Yeah, no, I meet people all the time. Hey man, do you still play? You know, yeah, we play once in a while.
Where are you hanging?
But these street bands where you can come to where professionalism isn't a dirty word, and so getting to come out at night and blend your stories with your audience's story is a big part of what the show's about. So.
Tom, I feel like you must have seen this because you put the fans in the film. We see that guy from Italy who's dressed like Bruce.
I've not only seen it, I in my 25 years, there's many shows I go to and I don't tell anyone. I go into the pit. I have these moments. I keep them close in my creative space. Like, there's an element of the fan in the edit room at times, and I go back and forth. And the one thing I was obsessed with Road Diary, I for years had seen the expression of people when I was imagining having that epiphany, having that moment. And with Road Diary, I would film someone for the longest time and wait for that moment, that connection. So there's, in the cutting process, there's a lot of those key moments where I imagine the transition happening in their eyes. They're having that recognition with the music and connecting. The conversation is what I'm chasing.
Yeah, what Tom did, it was really nice in the film, is he really did, it really is a love letter to our fans, a big piece of it, and that really came from what you observed and how you put the film together, you know. So.
You mentioned, this is a job, and you've had a lot of success at it over the years, including recognition, honors. You've got 20 Grammys, 50-some nominations. You got an Oscar. You got a Tony for the Broadway show you did, and you can plug that. Go ahead. Plug anytime you want. We're here at the TV Academy. What does it mean to you as a working man to have your peers say, maybe you could come home with a statue, one of these statues? Not that size.
Well, my wife has one. Yeah, she did. She produced a film and she won an Emmy for,
I think the people who love you want to see you get that EGOT, that EGOT.
Is that possible, really?
It's kind of up to them. What does it mean to get recognition from people who do what you do?
Well, we're lucky because not only have we made the music we wanted to make, stayed together all these years, but we've gotten the recognition for it, and there are many talented people who don't get that, So, there's an element of luck, an element of perseverance, of course, an element of hard work, but it's a blessing too, We've been very, very lucky that we have been recognized for the music we've made, and the concerts we've played, and I know, and have good friends. Just last night we have a small American Music Honors down in our neck of the woods there in Long Branch, and we inducted Joe Ely. Joe Ely is this fabulous musician out of Texas who is a great songwriter, great singer, great performer. Just has the entire package, and he's had a successful career. But I always feel like, gee, Joe didn't get the recognition he deserved. You look around and so that's a very, very fortunate part of our work life. So it's nice to be here tonight and have this experience.
Tom, you've made so many films with Bruce and the band over the years. What's the significance in your mind as a historian, as a documentarian? What does capturing the process do to enhance the music? Because Bruce said, early on he was nervous about having cameras around it. That would dispel the magic. I think you wouldn't do this unless you thought it enhanced it in some way.
Well, I got to a place of realizing that there were so many important stories. Like, I got the chance to make the documentaries about the making of Born to Run and The River and Darkness on the Edge of Town. And I thought that was a service to share these stories, tell these details, and really explain things that, if you're a casual listener, you learn more and connected deeper to the music. But also, if you had owned that record for a long time, I love the storytelling, I love the writing, but I also love the elements of E Street that I've witnessed, which is the work ethic that we're talking about, the commitment, the conversation with fans. All this was like a fantastic opportunity in front of me. So I just have to thank both these guys and the band for the trust and time, because the stories were there. I was circling them, and then I had time around the band, and it's just been such a great blessing in my life. And I hope the fans connect to the films in the way that it enhances the music and the writing and the story.
On the horizon, there's a dramatization of that process coming up. Jeremy Allen White's going to play you in a movie, Deliver Me from Nowhere. I'd like to ask you just that's another film that it's not fictional, but it's dramatized. It's recreating the creation of Nebraska. And I wonder what your experience was like. I think you've been on the set a few times. What did you tell that actor about playing you? Was there anything you offered him?
No, Jeremy had his own process and really knew what he was doing and worked very hard sort of to inhabit the character that he's playing. He's just tremendous. I think the nice thing for me was I got to revisit some certain moments in my life. Some of it takes place when I was quite young, and so I got to sort of step into my grandmother's house again. And there was some. It was quite emotional, So I don't want to talk too much about it because I want it to be a surprise for the audience, and I hope they enjoy it.
Yeah, that's good. This film ends with your mother.
Yeah.
And you're sharing a dance to In the Mood.
Yeah, she loved to dance and she loved the big bands, So whenever she would, right till the very end, and she had Alzheimer's for the last decade of her life, but she always responded to music, and she always was, So I had a little radio that played only 1940s big band music. I had a particular channel that I keep on for a lot, and she loved to dance. She grew up with two sisters, and this was, this was in the 1940s, and they danced till they couldn't anymore. I would go out and play in a little local bar. I'd see my Aunt Dora on a table, and you understand, she was 80 years old. She was not, she was 80 years old and on the table. And
New Jersey bars, man. I don't know.
Exactly, and my mother was that way, and her sister Ida, all three of them were like that. So they had a certain sense of, they grew up during World War II and part of that generation, and they just had that never say die, and I think I learned some of that from them, and which is why I tortured the E Street Band for 3.5 hours every night, But very, they're just inspirational people. So my mom passed away, and I sort of found that my brother-in-law had, just on his phone, had taken that little piece of film, and so I said, well, I'll put it at the end of the picture for Mom.
So much of the movie is about, as John Landau says, as you've said here tonight, about mortality, about resisting that, playing till the wheels come off. But it's clearly on your mind. And when the day comes that you're not here, what are your thoughts about how would you want people to remember you?
I don't know, man. I don't even know if they will. I think all of this is all sort of temporary. It's like, it was funny. I was thinking of selling my songs, which I did, and I said, I don't know, maybe I'll wait till I'm 80. Somebody said, who says you're going to be 80? I said, gee, that's right. I mean, you get to our age and you live, death becomes a part of your life, and a lot of people pass on, and you start to get used to that. That's the part of life that you've grown into, So in a certain way, you value every day perhaps a little bit more. You value every relationship a little bit more because it's you realize that the finiteness of life presses in on you, which is fine, because my life and I think our lives together, both me, Tom, and Max and all the guys in the band, we are fortunate that we've had very rich lives, with an experience and the time that we spent together. So let the good times roll.
A good way to end it. Let's hear it for Bruce Springsteen.
Thank you. That's been a part of my life.
That was a great panel, great interview, and I'm so grateful I got into tonight's FYC. It was a heartfelt tribute to chosen family and a gentle reminder to embrace aging with grace. Cheers to Gen X, now crossing the threshold of middle age, still figuring it out one chapter at a time. Oh, this is my friend Tim, an actor and a boomer who's making a bold move. At 70, he's headed across the pond to start a brand new life. And that takes guts, and I couldn't be happier for him. Well, no reception tonight, but they did send us home with dinner boxes. So let's take a peek inside. We have a vegan box and a non-vegan box. If you enjoyed this video, check out the rest of the performances and panels playlist for more industry moments, stories, and reflections. And you can also check out my lifestyle vlogs as well. Thanks for watching.